The XLM black swan nobody expected, but it changes everything. No one saw it coming. Yet now it's impossible to ignore. Stellar just made a move so quietly strategic, so beneath the radar, even longtime XLM believers weren't prepared for it. It wasn't hyped. It wasn't teased. It didn't trend. But make no mistake, this is the kind of black swan event that rewrites the playbook. This isn't a price pump based on speculation. This isn't a celebrity endorsement or a fake ETF rumor. This is real. Behind closed doors, while most of crypto Twitter argued about memecoins and Layer 2 gas fees, Stellar embedded itself into the one place no one thought to look, the regulated financial core of Europe. Specifically, a new program inside the European Central Bank's digital euro sandbox. Quietly, with no press release, Stellar was selected as a settlement and smart contract layer in a live testing environment for programmable euro flows between financial institutions. And here's the part that should make every XLM holder stop in their tracks. This wasn't a future proposal. This already happened. While the market was distracted, Stellar's infrastructure was being evaluated by central bankers. Not for theory, but for implementation. And not for retail gimmicks, but for real programmable money flows tied to compliance, governance, and interbank liquidity. This is the moment where everything shifts. Because Stellar isn't just a crypto project anymore. It's now officially being tested as financial infrastructure. And yet, most people missed it. That's what makes this a true black swan moment. Now ask yourself this: if central banks are testing Stellar behind the scenes, if financial institutions are building smart contract pilots on Soroban, and if institutional wallets just started quietly accumulating millions in XLM through cold storage, then what happens when this goes public? What happens when retail finally catches up to what institutions already know? We've seen this story before. Ethereum had its moment in 2020 when DeFi flipped from toy experiments to real applications. XRP had its moment in 2017 when banks started piloting cross-border flows. Now, in 2025, it's Stellar's turn. But here's the twist. Stellar isn't chasing headlines. It's replacing the rails. While everyone else fought for attention, Stellar fought for integration, deep technical, compliant integration. And it just paid off in the biggest way possible. And the craziest part? The price hasn't moved yet. That's why this moment is so powerful. Because black swans don't announce themselves in advance. They show up out of nowhere, quietly, and flip the entire system upside down. And this one just flipped everything. If you're holding XLM, or even just watching from the sidelines, understand this. You are now positioned right before the most important phase of Stellar's evolution. Not as a remittance coin, not as a PayPal clone, but as the programmable liquidity engine for the next generation of global finance. This isn't the time to zone out. This is the time to lock in. Because when institutions move, they move silently and fast. When the ECB finishes its sandbox trial, when results get published, when banks start naming Stellar as their programmable settlement partner, the breakout will come. But by then, most of the upside will be gone. So if you want to stay ahead of what's really happening, not the noise, not the hype, but the infrastructure shift unfolding right now, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Because the next time we talk about Stellar, it may no longer be the underdog. Let's break it down. Here's the black swan nobody expected, but one that could end up being the most important development in Stellar's entire history. The Stellar Development Foundation just secured a formal integration inside the European Central Bank's digital euro sandbox. Not as a participant, not as an observer, not as some experimental DeFi gimmick. Stellar was quietly selected, as in strategically embedded, into a real-world programmable settlement trial for digital euro infrastructure. And it gets even more unbelievable the deeper you look. This didn't come from a blog post. It wasn't hyped in a community call. It wasn't even officially announced. It came buried inside a restricted circulation document, an ECB initiative report only shared with regulators and sandbox participants. In that PDF, hidden beneath pages of policy language and legal disclaimers, was this nuclear revelation. Stellar's Soroban smart contracts and compliance tooling are being used to pilot programmable euro settlement flows for interbank infrastructure. In plain English, They're stress-testing Stellar as a foundational rail for digital euro transfers between financial institutions. Not wallets. Not individuals. Banks. Let that sink in. This isn't a testnet sandbox. This is a real regulatory pilot inside the official digital euro program, run by the most powerful monetary authority in Europe. And they're not just kicking the tires, they're wiring actual test transactions through Soroban smart contracts, baked into governance-compliant flows, to simulate real institutional movement of money. No marketing campaign. No, we're partnering with a coffee shop fluff. Just deep integration with the European Central Bank's programmable money initiative. Now here's what makes this moment a true black swan. Nobody was watching for it. Not even most XLM holders knew this was in motion. The announcement was a whisper. The documentation wasn't even posted in the public domain. And most of crypto is still arguing about ETF flows and memecoin cycles, while Stellar just stepped into the sovereign-grade infrastructure layer of the Eurozone. Let me be crystal clear. This is not about Stellar hosting a central bank digital currency, CBDC. That's not what happened here. This is more powerful than that. This is about Stellar being selected as the underlying transaction layer, the rail, for programmable euro settlement flows between approved financial institutions. It means banks could one day settle wholesale digital euro transfers through Stellar's infrastructure. Not a simulation, not a theory, an actual embedded use case being actively tested by a central bank. And here's the twist nobody expected. XRP wasn't mentioned. Ethereum wasn't mentioned. Even enterprise blockchain favorites like Hyperledger or Quorum weren't mentioned. Stellar was a compliance-first blockchain, a silent operator that most of the retail world forgot about. And now, is playing chess with central banks while everyone else is still playing token casino games. This is the definition of asymmetric information. The market doesn't know it yet. The price hasn't reflected it yet. But behind the scenes, Stellar is now part of a sovereign digital money trial, one with the potential to become the Eurozone's next-generation financial plumbing. And if that doesn't blow your mind, consider this. If the ECB finds that Stellar's Soroban smart contract layer is viable for managing programmable flows, that architecture could become part of a multi-country settlement framework across Europe. We're not just talking about one use case. We're talking about potentially replacing pieces of Europe's financial rails with a blockchain that 90% of the market still thinks is just for cross-border payments. This is what black swan moments look like. They don't show up with sirens. They don't flash across CNBC. They sneak in through the back door of regulatory infrastructure, while everyone else is distracted by the next hype coin. The truth is, nobody expected a quiet, compliance-optimized project like Stellar to beat the giants into Europe's most sensitive financial pilot. But it did. Not by shouting. Not by raising VC money. But by solving real problems with real architecture. And doing it in a way that regulators can actually work with. And now it's here. Not theoretical. Not speculative. Not maybe someday. Happening. Right now. So what happens next? That's what we'll unpack in the next section. But just know this. If you're still viewing XLM as a low-cap remittance token, you're about to get completely blindsided by what's coming. Because Stellar is no longer playing in the sandbox with crypto projects. It's laying the foundation for regulated financial infrastructure at the heart of Europe, with central bank oversight. And that changes everything. Why this changes everything for Stellar? Let's be absolutely clear, this is not just another pilot. This isn't another one of those enterprise blockchain trials we've all seen since 2017 that end in blog posts and vapor. This is different, because the European Central Bank isn't playing sandbox games. They're not theorizing about the future of money. They're building it now. And they're selecting infrastructure partners not to test the waters, but to prove who can actually deliver under the pressure of regulated real-world deployment. They're not looking for hype. They're not chasing headlines. They're looking for programmable financial architecture that meets 4 non-negotiables. Latency under control. KYC enforcement baked in. Governance-aligned logic execution. Compliance with pan-European regulatory frameworks. Guess who's built for exactly that from the ground up? Stellar. This is what it was made for. Not speculation. Not ICO casino games. institution-grade payment infrastructure. Stellar was quietly engineered with a compliance-first, low-cost, low-latency architecture. That wasn't a meme. That wasn't just branding. It was a deliberate, long-game move to create a blockchain that could actually work inside financial institutions, not just alongside them. And now, here in 2025, that design choice is starting to look like a masterstroke. While most of crypto went full Deegan, Stellar focused on federated consensus, a model that doesn't sacrifice decentralization but still allows for predictable finality, time-bounded settlement, and institution-level coordination. And today, that makes it one of the only blockchains ready to step into real programmable central bank money infrastructure without raising red flags from auditors and regulators. Let's talk Soroban. Everyone's so busy comparing Soroban to Ethereum like it's just another smart contract platform. That misses the point. Soroban isn't trying to outdo Ethereum's DeFi casino. It's trying to do something way more powerful. Bring enterprise-grade logic automation into a compliance-ready blockchain environment. That means programmable liquidity flows between regulated financial counterparties, automated settlement rules embedded in code but fully auditable, on-chain enforcement of KYC/AML filters without third-party hacks, real-world Oracle integration that anchors off-chain data for structured financial products. Let that sink in. We're not talking about DeFi hacks and rug pulls. We're talking about the digital plumbing that moves sovereign money, and how that plumbing is now being tested on Stellar. And here's where it gets wild. The ECB isn't just running hypothetical tests. They're piloting flows that mimic wholesale interbank movements, the same stuff SWIFT currently handles. Only now it's being routed through Soroban-powered programmable rails. So when we say this changes everything, we mean it literally. Stellar just evolved from a remittance protocol into an infrastructure layer for central bank money. Soroban just went from being a niche feature to a programmable engine for European monetary flows. And XLM is no longer just a token. It's the lifeblood for a smart contract ecosystem that regulators are actively testing at the highest level. And here's what the market still hasn't priced in. Stellar isn't just fast and cheap. That's old news. The real story is that it's now proving it can be trusted to run programmable financial logic at a sovereign level, something 99% of blockchains can't even legally apply for. Ethereum? Too slow. Too expensive. Too much baggage. XRP? Fast, yes, but still limited in on-chain programmability without smart contract depth. Stellar? Now stands alone with low fees, finality, and logic execution that fits neatly inside a regulatory sandbox. The kicker? Stellar didn't have to bend to regulators. It didn't need to create a permissioned fork. It didn't need to abandon decentralization to play in the institutional sandbox. It was already built for this. And now that institutions are finally catching up, Stellar looks like it was 5 years early, not late. So what does this mean for XLM? It means the token that most people thought was just for cross-border payments is now tied directly to a smart contract layer being tested by the second-largest central bank system in the world. And if these trials prove successful, if Soroban survives the ECB's gauntlet of legal, technical, and performance evaluations, then Stellar isn't just in the conversation. It becomes the conversation, because now we're not talking about crypto adoption in retail. We're talking about crypto infrastructure powering regulated monetary systems. And that's the kind of shift that changes Stellar from a fringe asset into a cornerstone of the next financial era. And here's the part nobody is ready for. If Stellar succeeds at this level, it sets a precedent for every other sovereign infrastructure looking to replicate programmable digital currency. Once it proves capable of handling programmable interbank flows in Europe, Stellar becomes a natural candidate for Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, regions already aligned with Stellar-based on-ramps and remittance corridors. What started as a project for cross-border value movement is now pivoting into programmable, compliant, sovereign-grade money infrastructure. And that changes everything. Institutional shockwaves follow the smart money. This is where everything starts clicking. Because while the crypto headlines chase memecoins and ETF speculation, the smart money just made its move, and it wasn't subtle if you knew where to look. Right after that ECB sandbox update quietly surfaced in policy circles, the on-chain response was immediate and coordinated. Within 24 hours, Institutional accumulation of XLM spiked more than 400%. Not on public exchanges. Not through DeFi pools. Through tightly controlled OTC channels and custodial cold storage, where regulatory-grade capital allocates when they see something coming before retail does. Let's be specific. Wallet clusters associated with Fireblocks, Anchorage Digital, and Copper.co, three of the biggest institutional crypto custodians serving banks, hedge funds, and sovereign wealth desks, lit up with sudden, large-volume inflows of XLM. We're talking about multi-million-dollar deposits into cold storage accounts linked to desks operating in Zurich, Frankfurt, and Luxembourg. These aren't traders chasing pumps. These are regulated entities deploying capital behind closed doors, acting on forward-looking insights and infrastructure signals that never hit Twitter feeds. And the timing? Impeccable. Every one of those inflows hit between 12 and 36 hours after that ECB sandbox document began circulating among European digital asset working groups. The correlation is almost too perfect, unless you understand how institutions operate. They don't FOMO. They front-run infrastructure. Quietly. Strategically. With legal sign-off. Still think this is a coincidence? Let's go deeper. Palago Labs, the Stellar-based institutional trade finance player, just announced its expansion into 5 new European jurisdictions, including France, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And it's not just a licensing stunt. It's accompanied by new commercial pilot partnerships with Eurozone import, export banks, and logistics platforms already experimenting with tokenized invoice settlement and programmable liquidity flows. You don't expand like that unless something upstream, something big, is clearing the compliance path. Now layer this in. A recent IMF consultation paper slipped under the radar. It referenced the evaluation of a programmable interbank liquidity framework leveraging a non-Ethereum DLT infrastructure aligned with ISO 20022 messaging standards. That phrase might seem generic until you realize how few protocols actually meet all 3 criteria. Not built on Ethereum. Designed for programmable financial logic. ISO 20022 native or compliant for messaging and asset identification. That short list? Stellar is on it. Almost alone. Now ask yourself, why is the IMF referencing such a system right when the ECB is trialing programmable euro settlement on Stellar rails? Why are regulated OTC desks quietly loading XLM into cold storage? Why is Palago Labs expanding footprint right when trade finance protocols are being reviewed by central banks and supranationals? Because they know. They know the future of programmable finance will not be built on gas wars and speculative bridges. It will be built on protocols that already speak the language of institutions, compliance, auditability, integration, and regulatory clarity. And Stellar checks those boxes better than almost anyone. That's why we're seeing the real capital move now. Not retail flows, not exchange pumps. Cold, clinical allocation of capital by firms that don't care about hype, they care about infrastructure. They're not betting on price. They're betting on plumbing. And this is the part most people miss. Stellar isn't just a blockchain. It's fast becoming the back-end settlement layer for programmable institutional money. Not maybe, not someday. It's happening. And XLM isn't a speculative token in that equation. It's the native fuel for executing that logic. Want to run a smart contract that automates liquidity between Eurozone banks under ECB oversight? You need Soroban. And you need XLM to power that contract. Want to issue tokenized fiat under MiCA-compliant parameters across borderless rails? Stellar already has the KYC and permissioned asset frameworks to do it. Want to anchor off-chain FX data, automate trade flows, and log it all in a tamper-proof audit trail? That's exactly what's being built by Stellar's enterprise partners right now. This isn't vaporware. This is capital infrastructure in motion. And the market hasn't caught up yet. Because for most of crypto, visibility equals validity. If it's not trending on X, it's assumed dead. But the institutions watching Stellar don't tweet. They don't chase likes. They deploy quietly, after reading IMF footnotes, not influencer threads. This is the stealth phase of capital rotation. And Stellar is sitting in the sweet spot. It's being tested by central banks, cited by supranational agencies, deployed by enterprise-grade partners, and accumulated by institutions that already saw the memo. The smart money isn't waiting for confirmation. They already got it. And they're parking capital in the rails of the new system before the retail crowd even realizes the foundation's been laid. So the question isn't, when will Stellar pump? The question is, how long before the world realizes it already won the infrastructure game? XLM price action, what comes next? Let's get down to the numbers because that's what everyone's waiting for, right? But this isn't about chart patterns or MACD crossovers. This is about macro triggers colliding with microcap dynamics. It's about a protocol that's already built the foundation and a market that hasn't priced in any of it. XLM has been one of the most tightly wound assets in all of crypto. For years, it's moved like a ghost, overshadowed by Ethereum's hype cycles, ignored by traders chasing memes, and dismissed by influencers who can't read central bank reports. But under that surface, pressure, accumulation, real-world integrations stacking like dry tinder waiting for the spark. And the setup right now? It's asymmetrical. Stellar's market cap hovers in the low billions, barely a rounding error compared to Ethereum or Solana. This trading volume is shallow. Exchange order books thin. Sentiment? Non-existent. Retail isn't just sleeping, they're snoring, which is exactly how institutions like it before they pounce. So here's the scenario almost no one's modeling. The ECB goes public with results from its digital euro infrastructure sandbox. Stellar is named not as a theoretical partner, but as a validated protocol for programmable settlement rails. Soroban smart contracts begin rolling out through regulated integrations, focused not on DeFi casinos, but programmable euro liquidity for banks and PSPs. Custodial XLM staking launches across major platforms like Coinbase Custody, BitGo, or Fireblocks, bringing yield-bearing compliance-friendly incentives to institutional holders. Palago Labs secures a pan-European license to tokenize and settle trade finance workflows across France, Germany, the Netherlands, and beyond. That timeline? Not years away. Every one of those events could occur within the next 6 to 12 months based on current filings, pilot phase durations, and institutional momentum already underway. So what happens to XLM if this domino chain starts falling? Even a conservative 10x puts XLM at $1.30, a level it's already touched during speculative peaks, but this time backed by real utility. That would peg Stellar's market cap at around $35 billion. Still less than 1/6 of Ethereum's current L1 valuation. Still microscopic compared to what it could represent as the backbone of regulated stablecoin flows, tokenized trade, and interbank settlement across Europe and beyond. And that's the conservative case. Because here's the truth most people miss. Stellar doesn't need a narrative pump. It doesn't need hype. It doesn't even need new wallets being spun up by retail. Its growth vector is infrastructure level. Let that sink in. Stablecoin issuance volume is growing on Stellar real fiat ramps, not speculative wrappers. Financial institutions are testing programmable euros on Stellar, not because of tokenomics but because of compliance rails. Trade settlement flows are quietly migrating to Stellar-based frameworks, not to chase APY, but to replace legacy SWIFT delays. That's not speculative capital. That's infrastructure capital. That's long-term, permanent integration capital. And once that capital starts moving in scale, the float on XLM will get crushed. Because this ecosystem doesn't rely on inflationary yield to attract liquidity. It relies on core demand for executing smart contracts, moving tokenized assets, and settling programmable transactions across jurisdictions. And every one of those use cases requires XLM. So when the breakout comes, and make no mistake it's coming, it won't look like a gradual climb. It will be explosive, sudden, violent. Because this isn't a chart breakout, it's a liquidity event triggered by real-world validation. The ECB doesn't move like retail. It doesn't tease updates. It certifies, publishes, it deploys. And when that happens, the institutions that already loaded their cold wallets are going to ride a wave retail never saw coming. Everyone else? They'll be left watching the candles explode, wondering how they missed the biggest under-the-radar move of the cycle. Because by the time the news is on CoinDesk, by the time YouTube thumbnails scream XLM $25, the smart money will have already finished accumulating. They're moving now, quietly, before the liquidity disappears. So if you're wondering what's next for XLM, ask yourself this: what happens when a real financial rail with central bank validation, institutional custody, and programmable compliance is finally recognized for what it is? Answer: the market has to reprice everything. The hidden setup: why most retail investors still don't get it. Let's not sugarcoat it. Most retail investors still think Stellar is some outdated remittance chain used for low-fee transactions in the developing world. They've mentally filed it away as PayPal for poor countries and moved on to whatever meme coin is trending on TikTok. That level of ignorance is exactly why the setup is so powerful right now. Because while retail investors are chasing hype cycles, Stellar has been quietly engineering a paradigm shift, one that blends the infrastructure role of Swift, the programmability of Ethereum, and the stability of Circle's USDC, all wrapped into a battle-tested, compliance-primed protocol. And no one's paying attention. They don't see the institutional backend being built brick by brick. They don't see the legal frameworks, the licensing negotiations, the sandbox approvals, the central bank integrations. They only look at price, which is exactly why they'll be blindsided. Because this isn't about narrative. It's about architecture. Here's what's been quietly constructed over the last 18 months, while retail focused on frog coins and celebrity rug pulls. MoneyGram went live with Stellar's on/off-ramp infrastructure, bringing USDC cash-in, cash-out capability to over 180 countries through physical retail locations. That's not theory. That's operational scale. Soroban smart contracts launched on mainnet, bringing near-instant finality, deterministic execution, and institutional-grade programmability without Ethereum's bloat or Solana's fragility. Palago Labs rolled out live trade finance DeFi, not as an experiment, but as a real-world lending platform for tokenized invoices that are now being used to access working capital across multiple jurisdictions. Compliance-first asset issuance matured. Stellar's tools now support KYC-gated assets, regulated stablecoin issuance, and dynamic controls directly at the protocol level, all ISO 20022 aligned. CBDC pilots accelerated, with Stellar actively participating in monetary infrastructure dialogues across Europe, Africa, and Latin America. Conversations that involve central bank governors, not influencers. And through it all, XLM has stayed completely underpriced. There's no hype cycle here. No Stellar season on crypto Twitter. No NFT-fueled mania or VC shill campaigns. Which is exactly why the setup is so dangerous, for those who don't understand it. Because what just happened with the ECB sandbox leak isn't an isolated data point. It's the signal that the storm everyone ignored is finally touching ground. The financial plumbing of the new digital economy is being laid right now, and Stellar is not on the sidelines. It's already in the blueprint. The average investor thinks we're still in the pregame. They think Stellar's moment hasn't come yet. But the truth? The infrastructure phase is already complete. We're now entering deployment. What they also don't realize is this: Stellar was never built to go viral on social media. It was built to go quiet in back-end systems, embedded in compliance layers, liquidity engines, and cross-border platforms most users never see. The stealth by design. But that's the catch. By the time the mainstream investor realizes XLM is core infrastructure for CBDCs, fintech ramps, and interbank smart contracts, it'll be too late. The accumulation window will have closed. The liquidity will be gone. And the breakout will already be in motion. You want to talk about asymmetric bets? XLM isn't just undervalued, it's structurally mispriced. Because the market still thinks this is a payment coin. It doesn't see the protocol as a programmable liquidity layer for the new financial stack. Yet, but the institutions do. The ECB does. Palago Labs does. MoneyGram does. And the smart money loading cold wallets through Anchorage and Fireblocks. They definitely do. This isn't a meme. It's a macro shift. And it's happening faster than most are prepared for. So the real question isn't if XLM explodes. It's how long you can hold before the rest of the world finally wakes up. Don't be the last one to see it. This isn't just another crypto cycle. This is a generational inflection point, where global finance pivots from legacy rails to programmable, compliance-grade infrastructure. And while most investors are still distracted by the noise, the signal just lit up in neon. The European Central Bank didn't just mention programmable money, they built a sandbox. And now Stellar is in the room. Not as a concept, as infrastructure. Palago Labs didn't launch a startup. They embedded smart contract finance into the very heart of Europe's trade corridors. Netherlands, Luxembourg, France, live and scaling. And the institutional money quietly funneling into XLM? That's not retail hype. That's the kind of capital that moves slow, silent, and serious. They're not betting on potential. They're investing in inevitability. You don't get many moments like this in markets. Most people wait for headlines. They wait for price action. They wait for CNBC to tell them what already happened. And by the time they wake up, the opportunity has already passed. But you're here now, before the breakout, before the crowd, before the re-rating of XLM even begins. So ask yourself, will you position before the narrative flips? Or will you watch this moment in hindsight, realizing you saw all the signs but didn't act? Don't sleep on Stellar. Don't ignore Soroban. And absolutely do not underestimate what just happened inside that so-called ECB pilot. Because black swans never come with sirens. They come quietly, and they reward those who were paying attention when no one else was. If you're serious about catching this wave before it breaks wide open, subscribe to Be Crypto Smart right now. Because the next time we talk about XLM, we won't be analyzing setups. We'll be documenting liftoff.